The boutonniere wasn't heavy, just annoying. It kept tilting sideways like it knew I didn't belong. I straightened it for the third time while pretending to check my phone, avoiding the mirror in the men's room of the Fairstone Vineyard event hall. From the echo of laughter just outside the door, I could already tell my date was blending in just fine without me. The wedding was for her cousin. I'd only been dating Jenna for 6 weeks, and this was our first big social thing together. I'd worn my nicest suit, gray with faint blue pinstripes, the one I usually save for job interviews and funerals. I'd even sprung for a pocket square, which felt overkill for someone who still rented month to month and kept his air fryer on top of his fridge. But Jenna, she walked in like she'd done this 100 times. Like this world of catered filet mignon and open-bar champagne was her natural habitat. She looked incredible. Pale gold dress that shimmered when she moved, hair pinned back in one of those effortless updos that probably took an hour. She introduced me to people like I was someone. "This is Ryan," she'd say, "not my boyfriend, not my date, just Ryan," but always with a little smile that felt like a small win every time. The ceremony had been sweet, too long, sure, but aren't they all? We sat under this white trellis wrapped in fairy lights while the bride and groom recited vows so perfectly crafted they might have been workshopped. Jenna squeezed my hand during the "through every storm" line. I smiled, even though I wasn't sure if I was the storm or the safe harbor in that analogy. Afterward, everyone drifted toward the reception area, a barn-looking space converted into one of those Pinterest-worthy wedding venues. Mason jars, Edison bulbs, a string quartet playing Coldplay. I watched Jenna float through the crowd, laughing with her mom, whispering to the bridesmaids, hugging toddlers and elderly aunts with equal charm. Me? I hovered near the bar like it was my assigned post. I chatted with a groomsman named Kyle about whiskey preferences and baseball trades until he got called away for a photo. I pretended to check emails I hadn't received. I did that thing where you take a slow sip of your drink just to kill time between social interactions. Then Jenna circled back, smiling like she'd found something cute at a flea market. "You good?" she asked, lightly touching my sleeve. "Yeah," I said, probably too fast, just, soaking it in. She looped her arm through mine. "Come on, you've got to meet my cousin. She's obsessed with her husband's best man, keeps joking that he should have been the groom." I nodded, already dreading whatever alpha-charged ex-frat guy was about to shake my hand like it owed him money. His name was Drew, and he was everything I was. Taller than me by a solid 3 inches, perfect hair that looked like it got trimmed weekly, not cut, charcoal vest, champagne tie, real cufflinks. He had one of those deep, laid-back voices that made even jokes about airline food sound like TED Talks. When Jenna introduced me, he looked me up and down in a way that wasn't rude, exactly just calibrating. "Ryan," he said, giving my hand a squeeze that bordered on dental. "Good to meet you, man," Jenna said. "A couple things." I laughed, half wincing, hopefully none of them true. He grinned, hopefully all of them flattering. There was a pause, not long, just enough to feel it. "So what do you do?" he asked, casually sipping his whiskey neat. "I work in operations at a packaging company. Logistics side," I said. I'd practiced that phrasing because I schedule deliveries for regional warehouses always sounded too small. "Ah," he nodded, "that's crucial. World doesn't spin without the quiet ones in the back keeping it on track, huh?" It was hard to tell if that was genuine or a polite backhand. I smiled anyway. We didn't talk much after that. He got pulled into more group photos and a teary conversation with the groom's dad. Jenna went to dance with her niece. I wandered toward the cheese table where I spent too long comparing the sharpness of Gouda like it was a wine tasting. And then it was dinner. We were seated at table 8, close enough to see the head table but far enough not to matter. The salads were already plated. I unfolded my napkin and caught Jenna looking at me with this soft, amused expression. "What?" I asked. "You're just so earnest," she said. I raised an eyebrow. "Is that a good thing?" "It is when it's real." I didn't know what to do with that, so I just held her hand under the table and listened to the DJ mispronounce names during the bridal party introductions. The toast started after the entrees. First, the maid of honor, nervous but heartfelt. Then the groom's younger brother, who accidentally cursed and made the bride's grandmother gasp. People laughed, clinked glasses, took sips of wine. Then it was Drew's turn. The best man. He took the mic like it was a weapon he'd been sharpening since noon, smiled, winked at the bride. "All right," he said, his voice ringing smooth through the speakers. "Let's make some mistakes." Laughter. He launched into stories from college, inside jokes. The The kind of roast that dips its toes in embarrassing and still manages to feel affectionate. The crowd ate it up. Even Jenna was laughing, leaning her head on my shoulder as he recalled the groom's failed proposal attempt at a red lobster. Then he pivoted. "I'll say this," Drew continued, swirling his glass like a villain in a Bond film. "Being at this wedding reminds you of how lucky some of us are to have found the real thing." The room hushed just slightly. People leaned in. "And how some of us," he said, gaze drifting toward our table like a compass to the north, "might still be auditioning." A beat. My ears rang. He didn't name me, didn't have to. People laughed, but not all of them. Some just looked over, at Jenna, at me. "Let's raise a glass," he said smoothly, lifting his, "to love, to patience, and to knowing when to leave the friend zone." The crowd cheered. Jenna's hand slid from mine. She wasn't laughing. I stared at my plate. My chicken looked like it had just judged me. I didn't touch my chicken after that. It sat on my plate, perfectly buttered and browned, next to a scoop of wild rice and asparagus that still steamed. I could smell the rosemary, but I didn't take a single bite. Instead, I reached for my water and drank it like I was trying to disappear through the bottom of the glass. Jenna stayed quiet. She didn't look at me. She didn't say anything either, not right away. She just adjusted the strap of her dress and dabbed the corner of her mouth with a napkin she hadn't used all meal. I heard someone at the next table mutter, "Damn," in that entertained but not too invested kind of tone. Someone else laughed the way people laugh when they're glad it's not them. That sound stuck to me. Like Lynn you can't brush off. I finally broke the silence. That wasn't about me, right? Jenna didn't answer at first, then she looked down at her lap. "I don't know, Ryan, was it?" I blinked. "I mean, come on, he didn't say my name." She let out a sigh so soft it could have passed as a breath. He didn't have to. The DJ transitioned into some mid-tempo Motown, and chairs scraped the floor as people moved to the dance floor, ready to forget whatever social bruises just landed. I stayed seated. So did she. There was an empty spot in my chest, not like heartbreak, more like someone had reached inside and casually removed the battery that powered my confidence. After a long pause, Jenna finally turned to me. "Why didn't you say anything to him?" "What was I supposed to say?" I asked, voice a little sharper than I meant. "Walk up there and yank the mic out of his hand, turn this into a viral video?" "No," she said, "just anything, you let it land." "Because I didn't want to make it worse." She folded her arms. "And how'd that work out for you?" The question stung more than it should have, because I didn't have an answer, because she wasn't wrong. Someone bumped into my chair, a kid chasing a balloon. I muttered sorry even though I hadn't moved. Jenna stood up. "Where are you going?" "To say hi to my cousin," she said. "She wanted a picture." I watched her walk away, disappearing into a group of women in matching bridesmaid dresses. I sat back, alone at the table, the clinking of forks and background chatter dulling into a single low-frequency buzz in my ears. I knew I should get up, make a joke, salvage the moment, but I didn't. I just sat there, peeling the label off my water bottle like it owed me money. 15 minutes passed before she returned. Except she didn't sit. She hovered by the table, clutching her purse. "I think I'm gonna head out soon," she said. My stomach tightened. What? The night just started. "Not for me." "You want me to come with you?" She hesitated too long. That pause was a whole conversation. "No, I'm good, I'm just tired." I stood up anyway. "Jenna, come on, he's just some guy with a mic and too much cologne." "He's the best man," she said. "He's not just some guy. He's been in my life since high school. He's practically family. And I'm what, your +1 for the month." That came out too bitter. I regretted it immediately. She closed her eyes for a second, then opened them like she was choosing not to fight. "I wanted tonight to feel easy," she said. "I wanted to have fun, and I wanted you to feel comfortable. But you showed up like you were ready to prove something, and then you disappeared into yourself the second someone poked at you." I didn't know how to defend myself, so I said the worst possible thing. "Maybe I shouldn't have come." Her mouth tightens, not angry, hurt. "Maybe." And then she left. Not a storm off, not a dramatic heel turn, just a quiet walk toward the exit with her gold dress catching the light in soft glints until the doors closed behind her. I didn't follow. I sat back down, let the dance floor pulse in front of me, watched strangers do the electric slide while I stared at a chicken breast gone cold. Drew returned a few minutes later, slapping shoulders and making the rounds like a politician. When he reached my table, he paused. "Hey," he said, flashing that toothpaste commercial smile. "All good." I looked up at him. I wanted to punch him, or shake his hand, or ask what the hell I did to earn his attention. "Was that joke about me?" I asked, keeping my voice level. He shrugged. "Nah man, wasn't about anyone." I stared at him. He laughed lightly. "Okay, maybe a little, but it landed, didn't it? Room needed a pop." "You didn't have to do that." "I didn't have to do a lot of things," he said, pouring himself another drink, "but here we are." He started to walk away, then paused. "Look, I've known Jenna a long time. She deserves someone who knows how to hold their own. If you can't laugh at yourself, you're gonna have a rough ride." He left before I could respond. Maybe he thought that was advice, maybe it was a warning, I couldn't tell. I sat there until the music got louder, until people started taking off their shoes and yelling song requests, until the tables emptied and the floor filled and the rest of the night pushed past the weirdness like it was disposable. But I couldn't. So I left. Didn't say goodbye, just slipped out the side door, hands in my pockets, boutonniere barely hanging on by a bent pin. Outside, the parking lot was mostly dark, save for a few clusters of smokers and a string of white bulbs leading to the vineyard path. The air smelled like grass and spilled champagne. I got in my car, sat for a while, turned on the engine, then turned it back off. Eventually, I sent Jenna a text. "Hey, I'm sorry if I embarrassed you. I didn't mean to make tonight about me." No response. I drove home in silence. Tried not to think about how quiet the passenger seat felt. Jenna didn't text back that night. She didn't text back the next morning either. By the time Sunday rolled around, I was second-guessing everything, from the suit I'd picked to the water bottle label I'd peeled. I kept replaying the moment Drew looked straight at our table, the way Jenna's fingers slid away from mine like it meant something, the way I didn't say anything fast enough to stop it. That Sunday afternoon, I finally got a reply. "Appreciate your message, just need some time to think." That was it. No hey, no emoji, no follow-up. Just 7 words that hit harder than any speech ever could. I wanted to believe she was just cooling off, that it wasn't some big deal, that the guy with the microphone didn't matter. But something about the way she'd looked at me, like I'd failed some silent test, kept burning in the back of my skull. I spent most of the day doing nothing, scrolling through streaming apps without pressing play, cleaning the sink twice, rearranging the spices even though I only ever used 4. I checked her Instagram twice an hour even though I knew she rarely posted. She hadn't uploaded anything from the wedding. But Drew had. A boomerang video, clinking glasses at the head table, captioned, "To the brave, the bold, and the barely invited." His smile was dead center in the frame. I didn't like it. I didn't even screenshot it. But I stared at it longer than I admit. That night I called my friend Will. He answered on speaker, which meant he was either cooking or gaming. "What's up?" he asked, background noise crackling. "Wedding was a bust." "Ah," he said, "the cousin thing." "Yeah. What happened?" I gave him the short version, Jenna looking incredible, Drew being Drew, the speech, the silence, the walkout. He let out a low whistle. "Dude, I know. You get roasted once at a wedding and fall apart." "It wasn't just the roast," I said. "It was how fast I stopped mattering afterward, like one guy with a glass of whiskey could make me invisible." Will paused, probably dying in whatever game he was playing. "Look, I get it, but I gotta say, if one joke made her bounce, maybe she wasn't in it like you thought." "That's the part that sucks. I don't think it was the joke, I think it was me." Another pause. "Then you gonna talk to her?" "I don't know, she said she needed time." "Yeah, but how much time is polite before you become the guy who doesn't get the hint?" I hated how fair that question was. We ended the call not long after. I promised to hang out later in the week, though we both knew I wouldn't follow through. The next morning, I got a message from Jenna. "Can we talk sometime this week?" I stared at it for a full minute before typing back. "Of course, name the time." She chose Tuesday, a cafe near her office, neutral ground. I showed up 5 minutes early and sat outside, nursing a lukewarm Americano and tapping the table in rhythm with my pulse. She arrived exactly on time, wearing a blazer and black jeans. No makeup, hair in a loose braid. She looked serious, not angry, not cold, just certain. We said hi, no hug. She sat across from me and took a sip of the tea she'd ordered before sitting down. "I've been thinking," she said, "about why that moment bothered me so much." I waited, let her talk. "It's not that Drew made a joke, that's what he does. It's that you let him define the room, you let him decide how people saw you." "I didn't want to make a scene," I said. "I wasn't asking for a scene," she said. "I was asking for presence." That word landed hard. "You've always seemed like someone who watches the room instead of stepping into it," she continued, "which is fine sometimes, but when you're with me, I need to know you're in it." I swallowed. "That's fair." She softened just slightly. "I wasn't embarrassed by you, Ryan. I was embarrassed for you because you looked like you'd rather be anywhere else once people noticed you." I nodded slowly. "I've never really been good at performative stuff at holding court." "I don't need you to be Drew," she said, "but I need you to be someone who doesn't vanish the second the spotlight moves." We sat in silence for a moment, then I asked, "Do you want to keep seeing each other?" She looked down at her cup, ran a finger along the rim. "I think we need to reset. Start over." "No, pause, just breathe, figure out if we're actually compatible or if we just liked each other's quiet." It wasn't a no, but it wasn't a yes either. I nodded. She stood. "I'll see you around." "Yeah, sure." She left, no hug this time either. I stayed seated until the cafe cleared out, then walked around the block 3 times before heading home. That night, I didn't check her social media. I just sat in my room, lights dim, thinking about what it meant to show up, to be present, to take up space without apology. The next day, I got an email from someone unexpected. Subject line, "From one best man to another." It was from Drew. I stared at the subject line for a good 10 seconds before clicking. "From one best man to another." "Hey Ryan. Didn't mean to catch you off guard at the wedding." I realized the line might have come off a little sharp. Meant it as a joke, nothing more. "I've been around Jenna a long time, longer than I probably should have. Just wanted to say, if you ever want to grab a drink and clear the air, I'm game." Drew. There was no way I was going to meet up with the guy who turned my night upside down. At least that's what I told myself at first. But the longer I stared at the message, the more complicated it felt. It wasn't an apology, not really, but it also wasn't smug. There was something almost neutral about it, like he was offering me a test I didn't have to take, but one I'd remember if I didn't. I left the message unread and went to work. That week felt like walking through fog. Jenna hadn't reached out again and I didn't push. Our last conversation was still fresh in my head, her saying she needed a pause, that she wanted me to be in it. Whatever it was, I clearly wasn't enough of it that night. Work didn't offer much distraction. Same routine, shipping delays, vendor complaints, Steve from purchasing microwaving fish in the break room like he had a personal vendetta against morale. On Friday afternoon, Drew emailed again. "Just figured I'd follow up, drinks still on the table, no pressure." I sat with that one for a while. It wasn't about the drink, it was about proving something, maybe to him, maybe to myself, that I wasn't the guy who hid in the corner, who let himself get tagged without swinging back. So I replied, "Sure, one drink, just conversation, name the place." He sent back a time and a spot downtown, some speakeasy-style bar I'd heard of but never been to. Low lights, craft cocktails, exposed brick. Felt like the kind of place where the bartender judges you for ordering a beer. I showed up 15 minutes early. He arrived 2 minutes late, because of course he did. "Ryan," he said, clapping me on the shoulder like we were old friends, "glad you came." I ordered a bourbon, he got something with gin and a rosemary sprig. We sat in a booth near the back. The lighting made everyone look like they were in a noir film. It was weirdly perfect. "So," he said, leaning back, "what you think of the wedding?" I took a sip. "Pretty venue, great weather, terrible speech." He chuckled, "Fair. Do you always aim for collateral damage when you pick up a mic?" "Only when I think the groom needs a laugh. And when the +1 gets crushed in the process." He paused, swirling his drink. "That wasn't my intention," he said, "but I get it. The line landed wrong. I've done enough speeches to know when something stings." I raised an eyebrow. Was it really just a line? He didn't answer right away. I've known Jenna a long time, he said finally, long enough to care about who she brings around. That wasn't just a roast, that was a vetting. He nodded slowly. You could say that. And you figured what? That if I couldn't take a jab, I couldn't take her. He looked at me then, not smug, not apologetic, just level. Not exactly, but I've seen her give too much to people who fade out when it gets loud. She deserves someone who shows up, even under pressure. I set my glass down. I'm not you, Drew. I don't work rooms. I don't shoot off one-liners and make strangers laugh on command. No one's asking you to be me. You kinda did that night. He didn't flinch. I asked you to be solid, to stand up for yourself. And if I had, I asked, if I'd stood up in the middle of that toast and told you to sit down, would you have respected that? He smiled. Honestly, yeah, I'd have raised my glass to you. I sat back trying to read him. And what about Jenna? He looked down into his drink for a moment. She's not mine to speak for, but I think she's waiting to see if you believe you belong. That line stuck with me. The rest of the night was not exactly bonding, but not hostile either. We talked about work. He was in consulting, of course, and basketball, which we both followed. We didn't talk about Jenna again. When we left, he shook my hand. Take care, Ryan. You too, Drew. I didn't hate him, which was annoying. I wanted to, but I couldn't. That weekend, I didn't text Jenna. I didn't want to chase. I wanted to show up the right way, not just by being present, but by being intentional. So on Monday morning, I sent a message. I talked to Drew not because I had to, but because I didn't want that night to define me. If you're still open to it, I'd like to see you. No pressure, just me, just real. She replied an hour later. Wednesday, 6 o'clock, that bookstore cafe I like. When I walked into the shop, she was already seated. No gold dress, just jeans and a burgundy sweater, hair down, eyes tired but warm. You look more relaxed, she said. I feel more me, I replied. Took a minute. She nodded. I'm glad you came. Me too. We talked for 2 hours, about everything except the wedding. Eventually I asked, can we start again? She smiled, not wide but real. Let's not start over, let's just keep going, honestly this time. I reached across the table and she took my hand. We didn't need a big speech. We just needed to show up. The first thing I noticed was that she didn't let go of my hand right away. We were still sitting in that bookstore cafe, half-finished lattes in front of us, quiet jazz playing overhead, the soft murmur of people browsing through new releases. It was one of those places that made time feel like something you could slow down if you really wanted to. And I wanted to. I should probably tell you something, I said, keeping my voice low. That night after the wedding, I wasn't just upset because I got roasted. It was the way everyone laughed like it was obvious. She tilted her head. Obvious how? Like I didn't belong there, like it made sense for the best man to treat me like an accessory instead of a person. She nodded slowly. Yeah, I can see how it came off that way. I didn't fight it because I wasn't sure they were wrong. She didn't answer immediately, and I didn't rush her. When she did speak, it was careful, honest. I've been guilty of that too, she said. I didn't mean to make you feel like you were just filling a seat, but I also didn't know how to advocate for you without you standing up first. I looked down at our hands. Hers was smaller, cooler to the touch, but steady. I don't want to disappear when things get uncomfortable, I said. I've been doing that for a long time, at work, with family, even with friends. I thought keeping my head down made me easy to be around. It made you easy to forget, she said softly. And that was the turning point, not a dramatic speech or some grand romantic gesture, just the simple acknowledgement of something real and uncomfortable between us. She let go of my hand and leaned back, but her eyes stayed on mine. I'm not saying I want someone who dominates every room, she said, but I do want someone who doesn't vanish from the ones that matter. I nodded. I'm trying. She smiled. I can see that. From there, things didn't suddenly get magical. There was no movie montage reconciliation or public makeout session between shelves of paperback romances. We paid our bill, walked out into the cold night, talked about podcasts on the way to her car. She gave me a long hug before she got in, and that was it. But it was enough. Over the next few weeks, things got better, slowly. We didn't define anything right away. No labels, no pressure, just regular check-ins, coffee dates, late-night texts that didn't feel like obligation. And then one Sunday afternoon, we were walking through a park and she just said it out loud. "I like being with you more when you're not trying to impress me." I laughed good because I ran out of pocket square ideas weeks ago. She rolled her eyes and nudged me with her elbow. "I mean it, you don't have to perform, you just have to show up." That line stuck with me more than anything Drew said. Because for the first time in a long time, I realized showing up didn't mean being loud or flashy or ready with a comeback. It just meant being fully there, not shrinking, not waiting for someone else to decide your place in the room. A few months later, I got another invitation. This time to Jenna's sister's wedding. I was hesitant at first, but not because of Drew. In fact, Drew and I had actually ended up on semi-speaking terms, not friends exactly, but mutual nods of acknowledgement. He sent me a DM once joking, "You get the mic this time." I didn't. But I did help Jenna's dad fix the sound system when it went out during the ceremony. I cracked a joke during dinner that got a genuine laugh from her uncle. I danced badly, but without hiding behind a drink. And when someone clinked a glass and said, "Speech," halfway through dessert, I didn't panic. I stood up just for a second, held up my glass. "To the ones who bring the room to life," I said, "and to the ones who show up anyway." The table clapped, someone laughed. Jenna looked at me with something halfway between amusement and affection. Later that night, she pulled me close on the dance floor and whispered in my ear, "You did good." I smiled, "You too." We didn't know what the future held, we weren't planning vows or picking out curtains, but we were trying, honestly, together. And that was more than enough. If this story moved you, subscribe for more real-life confessions and emotional journeys like this one.